Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Emmanuel and I release iOS videos quite often. So if this is something you're interested in, then maybe consider clicking the subscribe button. Also turn on notifications so that you're aware whenever I release a new video, all right? There's also a playlist that I think you're gonna find very interesting. So I teach iOS development from scratch. So I'm gonna leave a link to the card right there, all right? So today we're gonna be learning about snapshot testing. And if you don't have any idea what testing is in general, then I'd also recommend that you check my previous videos on unit testing and UI testing. So you're going to find that quite helpful. Okay, so snapshot testing, what exactly does that mean? Now imagine that you have, well, I know many of us have friends that claim to be responsible, but they're just, I don't know, just crazy, right? So a friend of yours comes to you and asks to borrow your car, and you know that for sure this person is going to basically destroy your car and just make unnecessary changes. Now, you're a good person, right? So you want to give your car to your friend. So, but before you do that, you say, hold on, let me take a couple of pictures of my car so that I know exactly how I left things. So you take your camera, you take pictures of the exterior, the interior, the tire, the mirrors, the seats, everything. You take pictures, right? Then you give the keys to your car and he drives away. Now, when your friend comes back, he definitely didn't disappoint and just messed up your car. So what do? You bring out your pictures, so the pictures you took initially, and you look at the new state of your car. So you look at the tires, you see that, okay, the tires are basically the same. That's good, test passed. You go to the mirrors, you see that you made changes to your mirror. So it's no longer facing left, it's now facing right for whatever reason. So that failed. You check the seats, you notice that he added maybe a leather casing to your seat or whatever. So, different changes, right? Now, snapshot testing allows you, just like we've explained, to have a reference where you can compare the current state of a view or a UI or your application in general to the past state of that same application. Now, we're going to be learning how to implement snapshot testing very simply in our application. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up XCode and we're going to create a new project. And I'm just going to call this, so go ahead, click app, and we're going to call this snapshot testing tutorial. Okay, so everything remains the same. Just go ahead and click include tests so that we can have like our test case, or if you want to know how to add tests to an existing application, then you can also check like my last two videos. I explain how to do that. All right, so go ahead, click on next, and I'm just going to save this in desktop, so go ahead and click on create. And great, now we have our application created. So let me just go ahead and increase the font of this text. Okay, sweet, great. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to implement a very simple UI. Okay, so we're going to go over to the main.storyboard and we're going to drag in a label to our ViewController right here. So I'm just going to drag a label and we're going to put this right in the center of our view. So hold down, what I did here, I just held down Control, click and drag, then hold down Shift, click on center horizontally and center vertically, then press enter. All right, so this is going to add the label to the center of the screen. So I'm just going to go ahead and increase the font to maybe something like this. Cool. And okay, so let's just finally just change the text to like hello world. Okay, so this is a very simple application, right? Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a reference to this particular label so that we can change the property of the color. Because what I want us to do is I want us to have different colors for the background and the text label depending on whether or not we set it to be night mode or light mode, right? So we're going to go to, or we can actually just do it directly from here. So bring up the assistant editor and we're going to hold down Control, click and drag it right into our view right here. And I'm going to call this hello label, just like that. And now we have a reference. Great. Awesome. Now the next thing I want us to do is I want us to add or create a property here called is let's say is dark mode, and this is going to be Boolean. All right. Now we're going to add a did set property here, and basically whenever this property is set, we want to modify the view or the color or the background color and all those things of the view. So actually what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to set this to default to false. All right. So dark mode is false by default. Now, so whenever the value of is dark mode is set, we're going to say view.background color should be equal to, and if it is dark mode, then the color is going to be .black. Nope. If it is light mode, then it's going to be white. Right? Then the same way we want to set the text color of the label to be equal to, so if it is dark mode again, we're going to set it to white. Then if it is light mode, we're going to set it to .black. All right. So yeah, this looks pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and run this application just to test and see that everything works very well. Finally, well, so this is our application, hello world. So let's go ahead and test the dark mode. So let's say that by default it is dark mode. So we expect that the background color should be oh no, I should have done it like did set. So in the view did load right here, we're just going to say is dark mode equals true. Okay, so this is going to set the property and then trigger the did set property. All right, so you can see dark mode. Awesome. Now we can see that the application works as expected. So what we want to do now is we want to take snapshots of both of these states to make sure that whenever the app is in light mode, it looks like white, and when it is in dark mode, it looks dark. All right, so this is what we're going to do. Now, in order for us to implement snapshot testing, we're actually going to use a library called Snapshot Testing, right? Great name. So how do we use or how do we add dependencies to our project? We're going to be using CocoaPods. So first, you're going to have to open up terminal. So when you have your terminal open, you're going to have to navigate to the project directory. So we have ours on our desktop. So we're going to do /desktop /snapshot testing tutorial. Okay, so now that we're there, next thing we're going to need to do is write pod init to initialize pods, and that is going to create a new file. So we're just going to go ahead and close this because we're not going to need this any longer. So close that out, and this is our project, Snapshot Testing. So now we have our pod file over here. We also have a new, okay, we don't have it yet because we haven't run pod install. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up pod file right here, and then right in our this particular snapshot testing tutorials test right here, we're going to add a new pod, and this pod is going to be snapshot testing, just like that. All right, so when you do that, go ahead, click on save, and you can close that, and now in your folder just run pod install. Okay, so now this is going to install snapshot testing, and because we have that installed, we can now go ahead and open the workspace and not the project. So we're going to open up the workspace like this, and then we're all set. So now we have snapshot testing installed in our project. Okay, so if you look, everything still remains the same. You can go ahead and run the app to make sure that everything still works as expected. So just hold down Command and R to run, and you should see hello world very shortly. Awesome, so everything still works good. Now, how do we implement snapshot testing? So what we want to do is right in our unit testing folder, right? So not the UI testing, the unit testing is where we want to write this. So right here, we have like the template class or the default class. If you wanted, you could do it over here. But what I like to do is just like to create new test files for specific test cases or specific test modules, as you will. So we're going to create a unit test case like this, and this time I'm going to call this, we can just call it hello, or since I'll just call it ViewController, so just say ViewController tests. All right, so ViewController test, just click on next. And by the way, this name is terrible, so maybe use something more descriptive. So make sure this is highlighted. We're adding it to this particular target, so just click on create. So now we have our ViewController test. So all of these tests are meant for our ViewController. Okay, so just like we've done in like the past videos, the first thing we want to do is we want to create our system under test, or SUT, as you may call it. So SUT, and this is going to be of type ViewController, because this is exactly what we want to test. Now, if you noticed, when I selected ViewController, it actually did this particular import, because this particular class is only available within our main target. So we are doing a testable import of our main main target, so that we have access to this particular class. All right. So yeah, we're going to be testing the ViewController class here. Then under our setup, we can just simply initialize our SUT, which is going to be equal to ViewController. Okay. And in our tear down, we can just go ahead and set SUT to be equal to nil. All right. Simple enough. Now we can just go ahead and get rid of all of these stuff. And okay, this looks good. So the first thing we want to do is we want to write tests for basically just testing the default state of the app. So we can just write tests, or func test default state. All right. So we want to test the default state of the application. So we already have access to our system under test. So what do we want to do? Since we're using snapshot testing, we're going to come over to the top and just import snapshot testing like this. And now that we have that, we're going to be able to do assert snapshot. And then here, we're simply going to be specifying the what we want to compare to our snapshots, right? So like the current state, we want to pass the current state of the app right here. And in our case, the current state is simply SUT, right? So that's that. Then the next thing we're going to do is, how do we want to compare the snapshots? Now, from our example about the person that took the car away, we took pictures, right? So that's an image. Now, if you click on, if you just press dot, you're going to see that there's actually a variety of variety of things you can test, or snapshot test. So you can see we have image, we have JSON, we have dump, we have plist, we have just a whole lot of things. And I'm actually going to show you the documentation later on, just so that you can play around with it more extensively, right? But for the sake of this video, we're simply going to be testing image. Okay, so we want to assert that our current system matches our previous snapshot, and we're comparing this as an image. And basically, when you're comparing as image, it's going to compare like the individual pixels to make sure that everything matches exactly. So even though you have a slightly bigger dimension, so if you have one as 100 by 100 and is the same design, everything perfectly the same, but you're testing with dimension 200 by 200, the test is going to fail. All right, so that's something to be aware of. If you're testing in one dimension, you have to test basically the same dimensions. All right, so I'm going to be using this I'm going to be testing our system, and yeah, we're going to be testing it as an image. So now that we have this done, it's as simple as this. Don't worry, it doesn't get so much complicated. So for us to test, we're just going to click on the play button. And because we've not registered, because we've not done the initial snapshot, what happens is the snapshot testing is going to basically get the first picture and use that as the base for comparison. Now let's just see what the error says. It says no reference was found on disk, automatically recorded snapshot. So that's exactly what I'm saying. Because we've not done an initial snapshot, we don't have a past record to compare with. The first time this test is run, it simply just took the snapshot and then stored that as the new base. Okay? Then subsequently, if you want to update your snapshot, you're going to have to specify a new parameter to be recording, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit. But let's continue. So now, if we run this one more time, you're going to see that the test is going to pass because nothing has changed, right? We didn't change anything in the UI. Now, let's go back to our main app, okay? And in our main project, we're gonna set the default state to be, let's say, orange, right? Or what color is this? Oh yeah, orange. So now I have changed the color, so I expect that the test should fail, right? But I'm gonna click on play and let's see what happens. Seems like the test actually passed, but that's wrong. It shouldn't have. And the reason is, if you noticed, we were creating our UI using storyboard, right? So normally when you try to, let's say for example, you want to navigate to another view controller that you created with storyboard, you have to instantiate that view controller from that particular storyboard. So you cannot create an instance of the view controller by just using parameters. Now, if you were doing this programmatically, then yes, this is going to work very well. And let me show you why. If you go over to our project and you head over to the testing folder, you're going to see that there is a new folder created over here called snapshots. Now, if you open this, you can see ViewController test, which is the name of the class or the name of the testing scope, if you will. Now, if you open this, you're going to see that there's a snapshot over here. But when we expand this, we can see that it is completely empty. So that's because the view didn't exactly load. It's just empty. We're trying to navigate to what you may call an empty view controller. So what's the solution? Rather than initializing this view controller as like this, we're going to need to instantiate this from a storyboard. Now, what we can do essentially is we can say let storyboard be equal to UI storyboard, and the name is going to be main. The bundle, we can set this to be nil, and then we can just say storyboard dot instantiate view controller with identifier, and here of course we're going to need to specify the identifier. For now, I'm just going to use view controller. Okay, then yeah, so this we're going to instantiate as view controller. All right, so this is going to be our SUT. So now we can go ahead and run this application one more time, and we expect the test to fail now because the new image is going to be different. Okay, so you can see right here, oops. Oh yeah, I forgot, my bad. So it's supposed to go to the main.storyboard and remember to set the identifier. Don't forget, like me. So now that we have that set, we can go ahead and run this one more time. And this should fail, but not here anymore, but here. So let's look at the error. What does it say? It says that snapshot does not match reference. And this is because the new image that it has gotten is different. Now, we know that the test has failed, but how do we see what the difference is? What we're going to do is we're going to go over to the report navigator over here. So click on that, and you can just go ahead and click on this target or the test, if you will. Now here, when you expand this, you're going to see that there's an attached failure difference. And this basically contains the reference, which is the initial test, the initial image you're comparing against. And you're going to see the failure, which is the new one. So how that your friend came back with the car, the state that the friend came back with the car. So the first one, this is before your friend took the car. This one is after your friend came back with the car. Now, this also shows you the difference. So the difference, basically, because the first one is completely empty, the difference is this, all right? So basically, this just gives you an idea of what has changed. But in our case, looking at this, we actually want, how do I say this? We want the new one, this difference, or the failure rather, to be, oosh, what am I pressing? We want this failure to be the, or well, not the failure. Let's go ahead and set this back to white. So I'm gonna come back here, undo this, undo, undoing and listening to me. Good. So we have white. So let's go back to our tests and we're going to run this one more time. Okay. So now we can, where's that? So go to the report, click on the particular test, and we can look at this again. Oh, shoot. I removed the identifier by mistake. Pardon me, guys. So we got to put this back. ViewController. So here we run the test one more time. Good. Good. So the report, we look at this and good. So now we can see the failure. So the failure is this, and we want this to be the new test. So when we want to basically change our reference image, right, the base image to compare against or to compare with, what we need to do is we need to go over to the test, and here we're going to add a new argument that says record, and we're going to pass a Boolean true. Now when you do this, this is going to run the test, but it's going to take the new snapshot and set that as the reference. All right. So now that we've run this, if you look at, excuse me, our test, so remember this is where we have all of our base snapshots where we compare against. So when you look at this, you can see that now the base image is the white one. So now that that is the white one, if we go ahead, we can even remove the record now and then run the test one more time, this is going to pass. Okay, so this is just something you need to know if you want to basically update a design. So let's say the changes that your friend made were actually good to you. So you just go ahead and run the test again, but this time run it in the record mode. And this is going to just store the new changes as the new default or the new correct image or snapshot. All right. Great. So now there are a lot of things we can actually do here. So one of the things we can do, you can see that we're actually testing with image. You can go ahead and test with or test on a particular device. So if you just say on and press dot, you can see that now you can test with, let's say, an iPhone 8 or an iPad or whatever. You can just do your test on a different device. And when you do this, like I said, remember when I said that it compares, like the dimension of the image matters great. So now that we've changed the device, if we run this, remember that there were we didn't change anything in the UI, but we changed the device, and because we changed the device, you're gonna see that it doesn't match. So you see the snapshot doesn't match. So that's something that you need to be aware of. If you're gonna be testing on an iPhone X or an iPhone 8 or whatever, you're gonna need to make sure that you record the view or the image on that device, and then you test subsequently on the same device. All right. So that's something worth knowing. At the same time, while you're testing on device, you can actually test, let's say use iPhone 8, you can actually test the orientation. So you can test on landscape, you can test on portrait. So you can see that this is actually very powerful. All right. So this is good. This is pretty good. Now, another thing we're going to do is actually test dark mode. So we're going to create a new function. And you can actually go ahead and pause the video and just try it out on your own and see how very simple the thing is. So I'm going to say test dark mode. Okay. So how do we test dark mode? First, we're going to need to trigger our app to go into the dark mode design. And how do we do that? We just simply say sut.isDarkMode. This is dark mode is the property that's in our ViewController. So we just go ahead and set this to be true. And now that that is done, we can just go ahead and insert the snapshot. What did I just write? Snapshot. So we're going to be matching SUT, okay? Then we're going to be matching as an image as well, all right? So now, because we don't have an initial test for this, we can go ahead and just click play, and initially it's going to automatically record this as the new base. So you can see from the error message that no reference was found, automatically recorded snapshot, which is good. So now that we've recorded that, we can actually just go ahead and run both of them so that this red stuff goes away. Good. So now you can see that both tests pass. And if you go to our reference right here, you can see that the first one is test default state, and this is our default state, which is good. The second one is testing the dark mode, which is also good. So you can see that it is correct. Now, if you go to your app, so if you go over to the ViewController And right here, we now change our dark mode color from black to like dark gray. And then we go ahead and run our test one more time like this. The test is actually going to fail because our dark mode doesn't match the reference. And again, if you want to see what the difference is, you can just click on that and just go ahead and click on the test that failed, expand this, and you see what the failure looks like. Oh, so it's gray when it should be black. Then what's the difference? Somewhere in the middle. All right. So yeah, you can see how very simple snapshot testing is. And just as a little added bonus, because you may find yourself doing this a couple of times. So what I usually do is I create an extension of a UI view controller, and basically I use the extension to instantiate our view controller from a storyboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file right here, and I'm going to call this UI view controller extension. Okay, and I want that inside this particular folder. And here, first, I'm going to import UI kit. Then I'm going to say extension UI view controller. Then we're going to create a static var, and we're going to call this identifier. Then this is going to be of type string. Okay, then basically what this is going to do is it's going to return a string value. So string describing, and we're going to be describing self. So this is basically going to convert our class name to a string and return it. All right, that's the idea of this particular function property. So secondly, we're going to create a static func, and this is going to be called instantiate. All right, now this is going to return self, so of the same type. And here we're basically going to do the same thing we did in our test while trying to instantiate our storyboard. So here we're just going to paste this, and it's actually very important for you to know over here, if you're going to be working, or if you're working or trying to use this particular function in a larger project that has different storyboards, then maybe you're going to want to pass in the name of the storyboard as an argument here. Okay, so let's say you have like a profile storyboard, a I don't know, whatever storyboard name, as long as it's different. But for our case, we have just one storyboard, which is called main. So that's why I'm having this over here. So yeah, you can just go ahead and do that. Then we can now go ahead and return. So we're going to be returning storyboard or instantiate view controller with identifier. Now this is going to be our identifier, okay, and as self. That's all. So this is going to be, this is basically going to allow us or help us create instances of a particular view. Now, one very important thing to note, if you're going to be using this method, then the name of your identifier always has to match the name of the class. All right, so it's very important. So for example, in our main, this one is called view controller. If you look over here, this is called view controller. So your storyboard ID has to be view controller. Right? That's the idea of using this, right? So now that we have that, rather than doing this like this, we can just go ahead and say SUT equals the name of the class that we want to instantiate from storyboard, and just say instantiate. Okay, so this is basically going to create an instance of the class using the storyboard, and then it's going to assign that to SUT, which is of type view controller. Now, if you go ahead and run this, so let's go back and remove the changes we made to the base. Did we? Okay, no, not base. The dark mode. Good. So now we've done that, we can just go ahead and run test again, and everything should pass because it's going to create an instance or a storyboard instance of the class, and it's going to compare it with the snapshots that we already have, which is basically the same. So all tests pass. And you can see snapshot testing, very simple. There's actually a whole lot more you can do. Just like I mentioned, if you go over to this particular website, you're going to see more in depth, like the things you can do, the different ways you can test or test your snapshots. You can see NS image, you can view controller, you can see scenes, you can see string, UI image, view, whatever. So you can just go through this document and see ways that you can actually do more in-depth snapshots. If you have questions, feel free to ask in the comment section. I'll try as much as possible to respond. And if you enjoyed this video or even found the tiniest bit of value in this, then maybe consider clicking the like button, thumbs up, so that more people can know that it is helpful. All right. So yeah, that's it for snapshot testing. In our next video, we're going to be talking about design patterns. All right. So yeah, if you are interested in that, then subscribe, turn on notifications, so immediately the video is live, you get notified. All right. So yeah, that's it. See you guys in the next video.